Hello, and welcome to my presentation about advanced directives. Thank you for joining me. My name is Milton Bennett, and I am a nursing student at Southwestern Community College. This presentation will be useful to other nursing students or new nurses who want to further familiarize themselves with the legal and ethical issues surrounding advanced directive use, and to enhance their ability to communicate with patients and families about advanced directives. So in Western culture, patients want and have the right to direct their own medical care. Research says that a majority of Americans feel an individual has the right to direct what medical treatments they receive at the end of life. Despite this widespread belief, though, only one-third of Americans have established advanced directives. This percentage is even lower in communities of color, and this often leaves physicians, family, and friends unsure of the wishes of patients or how to make medical decisions on their behalf. Nurses are often dealing with death and dying patients and the ethical issues surrounding end-of-life care. It's likely we've all heard of an advance directive before, in practice or perhaps in our own families. It's completed in advance in preparation of a situation where the patient is unable to indicate their end-of-life care directly. Advance directives are legal documents requiring completion by a competent individual about their own wishes. The right for a patient to use advance directives is guaranteed by the Patient Self-Determination Act. Types of advance directives include the living will and the durable power of attorney for health care. A living will provides specific instructions about what medical treatments the patient wants to omit in the event that the patient is unable to make such a decision. A durable power of attorney for health care allows the patient to select another individual that may make healthcare decisions on behalf of the patient if they are unable to do so. These documents may be combined or separate. Each state determines their specific criteria for healthcare advance directives and require a specific legislative form to be used. Most states require directives to be notarized and witnessed by two people, but do not require a lawyer. Nurses should ensure they understand what's in these documents and their agency's policies regarding advance directives. The Five Wishes. The Five Wishes is one of the most commonly used and simplified versions of advance directives. It was created by Aging with Dignity, a national nonprofit organization. It addresses the healthcare aspects at end of life, but also the emotional and spiritual issues faced as well. It is written in simple language that is easy for laypersons to understand. The form considers the following five areas that come up at the end of life. Number one, the person who will make healthcare decisions when the patient cannot. Number two, the kinds of medical treatment the patient does and does not want. Number three, the level of comfort the patient would prefer. Number four, the way the patient would prefer to be treated by others. And number five, the information the patient would like his or her loved ones to know. There are sections within each area to provide further responses to each matter. The five wishes are widely used throughout the United States. This form is accepted by 42 states and it is available in 27 languages. The five wishes must be appended to a state-approved form in the following states listed. So let's talk more about the ethics surrounding this. Some of the most frequent and disturbing ethical dilemmas involve death and dying. The population of older adults has increased dramatically. This, in combination with advances in medical technology, has created a greater number of ethical issues. Nurses will likely encounter death and dying patients, and termination of life support measures and withholding or withdrawal of food or fluids are examples of complicated ethical issues. Although there is increased awareness for an urgent need for high-quality care at end of life, the end-of-life period is not well defined, and there is no general consensus on the time this period lasts. Currently, the definition of end-of-life care is based on the time remaining until death occurs and the stage of illness the patient is in. Unfortunately, this time period can vary in length, which leaves the patient at risk of not receiving quality end-of-life care. Often, explicit instructions are needed during end-of-life care. Healthcare providers and friends and family of the patient are often left unsure about what the patient wants or doesn't want. Many of these ethical issues could be avoided if patients completed advanced healthcare directives. Withholding or withdrawing life support measures are exactly what they sound like. This is a complex process that can take days. The nurse should be prepared to process the complex emotions experienced by family and their own feelings about the event. Nurses should understand that withdrawing treatment is not the same as withdrawing care. Family may have strong feelings about treatments and may not understand which treatments are palliative or those that are life-sustaining. Keep family informed and be prepared to explain why some treatments are continued and others withheld. And I placed this quote from the Journal of Palliative Medicine because I thought it captured the distress surrounding the situation. Now I'll discuss a little about how the advance directive process works in our state. The Secretary of State's office provides blank documentation for a living will, healthcare power of attorney, advance instructions for mental health, and organ donation. These forms were easily obtained from their website. North Carolina's Right to a Natural Death Act recognizes a patient's right to a peaceful and natural death. The Advanced Care Directive Registry of NC is a voluntary registration of directives. As a reminder, it is up to the patient to ensure documentation is completed appropriately and to provide advance directives to family members, physicians, hospitals, or where needed. I do not believe hospitals can access this registry, but individuals can. Again, these documents should be readily available for those who may need them. North Carolina MOST and DNR are physician's orders. Only original DNR and MOST forms can be used. Copies are not valid. DNR orders are most useful for emergency personnel in cases of cardiorespiratory arrest. A MOST form has more detailed direction about treatment, comfort care, etc. for seriously ill patients. They should be sent with the patient during discharge or transfer. The MOST form has its characteristic color, in this case pulsar pink, and aid in quick identification of the document and how providers are to direct or withhold treatment. And I've placed examples of these for students who may not have seen them. A patient may revoke this document at any time by destroying the form or writing void in large letters across it. And North Carolina GSA 90-322 outlines the procedures for natural death in the absence of a declaration. Okay, here is a copy of the North Carolina GSA 90-322. This is obviously very busy and wordy, but it gives you an idea of the legal language that's being used, and I encourage you all to review this on your own. But basically, the first part determines that the patient cannot currently communicate or make healthcare decisions, and they will not regain that capacity. That is determined by a physician. Additionally, the patient may have an irreversible or incurable condition that will result in imminent death. If those items are true, then the next portion describes how life-prolonging measures may be withheld or discontinued in concurrence with the following in the order indicated. So the initial determinant is the guardian. That's followed by a healthcare power of attorney, and then followed by healthcare agent, maybe someone appointed by the patient, perhaps not in assigned power of attorney role. That's followed by the spouse, followed by parents and children greater than 18 years of age, followed by siblings greater than 18 years of age, followed by an individual with an established relationship who can reliably convey the patient's wishes. If none of those are available, then it's up to the discretion of the attending. At the end, though, the statute goes on to say that physicians' discontinuance of life-prolonging measures shall not be considered unprofessional conduct in these situations. I was able to speak to Rodney Pilson for more perspective on these issues. Mr. Pilson is a retired chaplain and the manager of family services at Carolina Donor Services. He described the national working agreement between organ procurement organizations and hospitals that may bill Medicaid or Medicare, and that his organization has the ability to follow patients, review charts and labs, and speak to nurses about changes in patient condition. A GCS of 5 or less triggers an initial phone call to their office. CDS receives thousands of these calls each year, of which only about 200 become donations. Some conditions will preclude organ donation. I learned that organ donation is irrevocable after death. Family cannot intervene after the death of an individual. CDS may have multiple conversations with family when there are differences. And when family is resistant to donation, it's likely they're seeking to exert control over a situation that includes the loss of a loved one. CDS may try to help family see the big picture and help them be okay with a donation. There is a possibility that one person could donate 7 to 8 organs and save lives. And I was interested in learning more about the DMV organ donation. Rodney stated that this is actually a legal document, and when that's indicated, donors are entered into the Donate Life North Carolina database. And as I described, these are patient wishes irrevocable after death. So that was a little interesting. And the map shows which areas of North Carolina are serviced and by whom. And this is Tori. I went to high school with Tori, and she's now an oncology nurse over at Mission. I expected that she would be caring for patients who have advanced directives or who are in the process of completing them. She informed me, however, that many of her patients actually did not have a living will or healthcare power of attorney. Tori stated that the presence or absence of advanced directives is first documented in the admissions assessment. When there is no indicated appointee, Tori always considers whether the patient is married or not, because the spouse is the automatic healthcare power of attorney in cases where the patient cannot express themselves directly. She believes that eligible next of kin are able to relinquish their powers of attorney status to the next eligible agent. If a patient is dying and a directive is not in place or there is not one on file, she will have a conversation with the patient about the importance of this document. She does this as a patient advocate and with respect to their autonomy. She may also suggest palliative care resources for terminal patients as indicated. If the patient states their wishes surrounding end of life, they are immediately documented and relayed to the physician, who orders DNR and/or further consultation. When a patient requests living will assistance, a hospital chaplain comes to have these conversations with patients and families. At all times, the healthcare team must abide by the directive and follow the wishes of the patient. When there is a dispute in the family regarding end-of-life care of an individual, the ethics department and risk management will get involved. And in a case that she described, a patient came to the oncology department as a direct admit from her physician's office. The patient had a history of bowel cancer and perforated bowel and had just signed a DNR over there. The patient arrested about 5 minutes after arriving to the unit, and the patient's husband immediately requested CPR and intervention for the patient as this arrest was quite sudden. At that time, the staff wasn't aware of any advance directive and CPR was initiated. They coded this patient for about 15 minutes until an attending physician arrived and announced to discontinue CPR due to the new directive that had just been signed. And they stopped, and I know this would have been a very difficult moment for the department and, of course, for the patient's spouse. And everyone involved attended a debriefing and had to meet with the hospital's risks and ethics department. Minority groups are significantly less likely to have their end-of-life care wishes followed, and there are multiple reasons why people of color are less likely to have advance directives. Some individuals do not understand English, and those who are non-native speakers may find it difficult or impossible to understand the forms and terminology used by healthcare workers when discussing advance directives. Others do not complete advance directives because of cultural beliefs, mistrust of the healthcare system, or inaccurate views of how advance directives work. Some groups, such as the Chinese and Native Americans, view discussing death as taboo and believe end-of-life care planning will cause death to occur. Some African Americans can view advance directives as a sign they have given up on God or abandoned hope for recovery. They may believe that advance directives are not necessary because their family will make the right decision for them. Others may feel they won't receive the treatment described because of past instances of institutional racism in healthcare. Latinos are often unfamiliar with this concept in general. Some Latino populations may believe that hospice care is the same as nursing home care, which violates their traditional cultural belief that sick and dying individuals be cared for in the home by family. Other explanations include a general lack of healthcare literacy and reduced access to care, and of course, historical trauma plays a role in less acceptance of Western values. Struthers and Lowe listed the so-called 7 dimensions of nursing care that were revealed in their studies. This model can be used by other cultures to understand and provide nursing in the Native American realm. And locally, I learned that the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians Legal Assistance Office will help draft end-of-life planning documents for enrolled members, spouses, first descendants, and tribal employees. Presented here are just 2 of the journal articles that I've used as sources, and for the sake of time, I'll let you review those as you like. And finally, I'll discuss the nurse's role in a bit more detail. It turns out that nurses are in a great position to help individuals understand the importance of advance directives. One important step is to encourage the patient to discuss end-of-life care with their loved ones. Emphasize the importance of the discussion itself rather than simply completing the forms. Take into account the patient's background, culture, and level of education when discussing directives. Frame the advance directive as a positive device that helps to clarify patients' wishes rather than what the patient wants to avoid. Remember, patients may find reassurance that directives relieve the burden of family or someone else making these large decisions for them. And don't make assumptions based on the patient's cultural or religious background. Instead, asking questions is the safest approach. Nurses should continue to respect patient autonomy and advocate for whatever wishes the patient has expressed. Nurses may further promote advance directives by encouraging their own and other healthcare agencies to use simple, easy-to-understand, end-of-life planning documentation that is culturally appropriate to different types of communities. Nurses working with a patient who have an advance directive should understand what it includes, the laws in that state related to self-determination, and the agency's policies and procedures for following advance directives. Remember to acknowledge the grief response to loss and the heightened level of anxiety surrounding death. There is an inherent degree of stress surrounding death, and individuals and their family may be having increased emotional strain. Patients and their families will likely be experiencing anticipatory grief and may be having a very difficult time with this situation. And lastly, it is important to revisit and review a patient's wishes, as they may change over time. And thank you everyone for joining me today. I hope everyone was able to learn more about advance directives and can employ this information into your nursing practice. Please contact me should you have any further questions or comments. Thanks again.